Good morning. I'm Julio Saenz, along with Mauricio Riveros. Today we'll meet Larry Frye, head of school at the Harley School.
We hope you will be inspired.
Celebrating leaders in Rochester's unique and vibrant business community, we'll meet entrepreneurs whose passion and perseverance have helped push through life's challenges. Join us as we share their stories and journeys to success. It's time to be inspired.
Larry, thank you very much for being inspired. A show that we develop to interview great organizations, institutions that are in our community, and in this case, a very important institution in the education sector like Harley. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about you. Who is Larry?
Mauricio, thank you so much for having me. Julio, you as well. My name is Larry Frye, and I'm the head of school at the Harley School. And I grew up in upstate New York near Syracuse and went off to college and started out working in college admissions at Hamilton College. And when you work in college admissions, it gives you sort of this view into all of American secondary education, because you visit all these schools and you come to understand that schooling can be done very differently. And it was from there that I started on a career working in schools. And so I started at a school outside of Boston called the Cambridge School of Weston, a progressive school there. And then along the way, I went to graduate school and then came to Harley School in 2004. And we came, my whole family, my wife works at the University of Rochester. We brought our 3 kids. And it was kind of a gamble. We had really never been to Rochester. All I really knew was the Harley School. And I had, the gamble was that my kids would be happy and challenged and have a great education, and that I'd have a great experience. And that turned out to be completely true. It's been an incredibly lucky break for us to be in Rochester and to be at Harley all these years.
Oh, that's great. That's great, Larry. And one of the things that are very interesting is independent schools. Right. And how independent schools work. And now you are working. You were in the university and now working with a school. Tell us a little bit about the concept and philosophy of independent schools.
Well, so there's 2 ways to answer that. On the one hand, the basic difference is that independent schools are independent from oversight from, let's say, a church. There's no church that tells us what to do. And also the state, we have much more freedom in terms of devising curriculum, devising program, and in building, kind of a school that has a distinctive mission and program. So on the one hand, the basic difference is that we're not, as it were, beholden to church or state. We are independent of those things. But on the question of philosophy, that's the interest that I had coming out of college, or coming out of college admissions, that schools can do things in very different ways. So in a given day, when you visit Rochester, if you're a college admission officer, you can go to a Jesuit school at McQuaid. You can go to a traditional Catholic school at Mercy or one of the other excellent schools. You can go to a public school, you can go to a charter school, you can go to a place like the Harley School, which is a college preparatory school in the progressive tradition. So there's a whole range of different ways to do this. And I think distinctive missions and distinctive programs make for better schooling.
And so one of the things we've had a lot of business leaders and leaders in the community on the show, and talk about their experiences, leaders guiding their organizations through COVID. What's that been like for the Harley School and for you?
Well, it's been challenging, like for everybody. And I'm sure you've heard from other school leaders and school children and parents. It's a really challenging time. We are lucky at Harley in that because we are independent, we are used to kind of devising our own program and to being able to improvise quickly. And last spring was an improvisational moment in education. And so, it was challenging, but we were able to kind of put together a great program for our kids, which we called Harley at Home. And we're proud of how we did, but it's still, not as good as being in person. Let's just be honest. And so this fall, we're lucky in that, you know, we have a really big, beautiful school, and we're small by design, right? So the social distancing is something that we're able to do because of those two, you know, those two facts. So for us, it's nursery through 8th grade are here every day, and the high school students are here every other day. There are 2 cohorts that flip back and forth. But I was saying earlier that it requires a lot of improvisation and you know, kind of being able to be flexible and reinvent what you're doing. And that's a strength for us. I'm happily, you know, because this moment calls for it. So, you know, that's kind of how we've operated. Now, like everybody else, we have the safety protocols in place. You can't get in the building without going through a health check. You know, we are doing all kinds of social distancing and masking at all times. Feeding the kids is really different and really kind of a challenge. You know, there's some things we can't do, right? We can't do all the athletic things we normally do. And it's hard to keep kids apart, I have to say. Kids really want to be close together. But that is what's called for in the pandemic. So that's what we're able to do.
Yeah, no, this is a very important aspect that has impact everybody, right? And now going back to the education aspect, and you know, Rochester, New York, this region where we live and this area offer, like you were saying, multiple opportunities for parents to decide where their kids need to go. We have an incredible school district in Pittsford that's very competitive. And then we have the challenges of the school district in the city. My question to you is why parents should invest a significant amount of money to send their kids to Harley? If you can explain why they should do that.
Yeah. So for my family, you know, we realized early on, my wife and I, that there's really no greater gift that you can give to your kids outside of loving parenting than a great education, right? There is no material thing that will be better than that. There's no experience in the summer. There's no camp you can send them to that's better than a great education. And so we really put that at the top of our list, and we're willing to go without some things, truthfully, so that our kids could have this experience. I believe in independent education because I think a really small and personalized program that has a clear kind of philosophy and way it thinks about learning just makes for a more compelling, you know, kind of educational experience. I do think that, you know, for us, we set the bar really high, right? All of our kids are going to college. And in our mission statement, it says we are trying to help our kids lead lives of great purpose. That's a very lofty claim, right? But that's what I think the stakes are. You know, I think a kid's education, there's just nothing that is, you know, has greater import than that. And I have to say, when I hear parents say, "Oh, my kid's school is fine," I don't understand that. I don't know why fine is good enough. So, you know, and so I would encourage people to ask themselves that question. You know, if fine is fine, yeah, I guess so. But if you want something better than that, then look around. And not just Harley, right? We have all these wonderful other opportunities and options in Rochester. But that's the way I think about it.
So speaking of that, and you know, we have a lot of business owners on our show, and you know, taking care of customers is such a key part of all this. How do you deal with all these parents that are your customers and want different things for their kids? Different, you know, it's so it seems so hard to me. I think of coming from a business background. How do you please so many different customers who want
Well, a little earlier I said that I think having a distinctive sort of philosophy and program is a strength. And I think it's important that parents go into it in an informed way, right? So if you're coming to the Harley school, it's a secular school. There's no religious attachment at all. And if you're going to Our Lady of Mercy, of course, there's a pretty meaningful religious element to that. And those are conscious decisions that you can make. And if you end up at Harley, you shouldn't wonder where the religion class is. And if you end up at, another, you shouldn't have the sort of the reverse experience. You want to go into this, kind of knowing what you're getting into. And so we try to communicate really clearly about who we are and what we strive to achieve from the minute somebody walks in the door. So we want it to be clear. We want people to know what they're saying yes to, as it were. That said, you can't anticipate everything. And it is sometimes the case that, you have to work with parents on some of these things. But, like I said earlier, we have really ambitious aspirations for the kids. We want them to be happy and to be leading the best lives they possibly can. Education isn't just to get you into college. It's not just, a transactional thing that this leads to that. It's really meant to be preparation for living life well and fully. And so, when that's where you're coming from, it's usually the case that we can work out those little wrinkles.
Well, thank you so much, Larry. We'll be back with more after these messages.
So in today's situation of the country about equality and diversity, and a nation that is trying to bring opportunities for all, what is Harley doing about diversity and trying to be able to have people with different backgrounds, different races? How you achieve that, considering the restrictions of budgets and things like that for parents that cannot afford to send their kids because, the circumstance that they have. What specifically Harley is doing to achieve that?
I love that question. Thank you for asking it. The first line, I told you that our mission included, we're trying to help kids lead lives of great purpose, right? The very first line is, we are a diverse, inclusive school. That's literally the first line of the school's mission statement. I used to be the head of the upper school. The last 3 years I've been head of the school. And when I was head of the upper school, I used to remind kids of that often. And I would remind them that it wasn't just an aspiration, that it says we are. So we need to work together to live that mission. Now, in terms of how we do it as an administration and faculty and staff, we put aside $3.3 million in financial aid every year. And over half of our students are on financial aid. So, it's paradoxical. Harley is a tuition charging school that's expensive. I'm not going to pretend that's not true. But at the same time, we have quite a lot of socioeconomic diversity because we put so much money aside for exactly that purpose. Now, in this moment, so that kind of speaks to socioeconomic diversity, right? In this moment of national, really racial reckoning, I guess I would say, we have been doing a great deal of kind of soul searching and programming here at the school. So we have always prided ourselves on our commitment to living as a diverse, inclusive school, but we really doubled down. This summer, we instituted a new racial literacy curriculum called Pollyanna. We also have a program that I think Harley's the only school that I know of that has. It's called Rights and Responsibilities. All high schoolers take rights and responsibilities, and they go through an examination of identity. Who am I? In context. They look at identity, they look at power, they look at privilege, and then they do an advocacy project. They pick a thing that they care about and they advocate on its behalf. I think that if we want kids to go out and make the world better, it's going to be through advocacy and dissent.
Funny enough, what I was going to ask you, we had a question earlier about COVID and how your organization was able to adapt quickly. From all that we've learned and the innovation that we had to fast track because of all this, what are some of the things you've learned that you may incorporate permanently into the way you do things at Harley from this time?
I think quite a bit, actually. I was in a meeting with what we call our teaching and learning committee today, and we were having a conversation about what is a post-COVID Harley, and kind of looking around the room, which of course means looking around a Zoom call. We were all kind of shaking our heads at how much we had done in such a short period of time. Some of that is around the adoption of technology, and that raises its own equity issues, right? Kids have to have access to reliable technology if you're going to be working with them in that mode. So we worked really hard to make sure all of our kids had devices that they needed. We also, we have an alumnus who is in the business of internet hotspots, hotspots. So we made sure all of our kids had them for those families who came from places where they didn't. So some of it is, kind of equity issues, but on the teaching and learning side, there are a lot of really powerful tools that teachers, can make use of to make learning, kind of more compelling and to stick better, as it were. And, teachers are also creatures of habit. A lot of us, I taught English for a long time, and I like books. I like pieces of paper. So we're not always the quickest to adapt to new technology. And so sometimes these moments, push you. But at the Harley School, where, the faculty is incredibly high powered, really hardworking. And, they adapted really fast. When you're smart and hardworking, you can get a lot done. And these folks really did that.
How do you see the future of education? This is in general, not only Harley, but what are the keys to really create a transformation in education? And I know it's a hard question, and I don't know, and no one has a magic ball here, but what's that future?
When I think about these broad questions, I actually try to boil it down to, our experiences as children and our experiences as parents, right? Anybody who has a toddler knows that they are wired by nature to be joyfully engaged in the world. That's what stomping up and down in mud puddles is. To be joyfully engaged in the world and really curious about it. That's how they are. That's how they come out. They want to learn. They're learning machines. And honestly, my concern and maybe critique is that a lot of American education takes that joyful engagement out of them. And what we ought to be doing is cultivating it. There's Plutarch, thousands of years ago, said, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, it's a fire to be ignited. The way we think about education in America is that you unscrew the top of a kid's head, jam a bunch of facts in there, and then give them a test. And of course, everybody who went through that program knows that as soon as you walk out of the test, it starts leaking. So that's just not the best way to learn. Now, there's some things where you have to do it that way. You got to get your times tables down. There's some things that are not negotiable. But most of learning is about lighting fires. So if a kid is passionate about Shakespeare, a kid is passionate about the periodic table, a kid is passionate about jumping up and down in mud puddles, there's something to build on. And that's what progressive schools do. They try to take that joyful engagement and build out from there.
And part of the learning process too is it sounds like our organization is very dedicated to creating well-rounded people. How is community service part of what you teach at Harley?
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do. And we had a little upper school assembly last week where we found out that our kids, even through the pandemic, did 7,000 hours of community service last year collectively, just in the upper school. So that continued to be a big presence in our kids' lives, even through all of that. It might be that the best example of what we do around service at Harley is a program we have here called hospice. Everybody knows what hospice is. When people are at the end of their lives, they go into hospice care and they require bedside care from volunteers. And often you'll meet the hospice nurses and that sort of thing. But it also requires trained volunteers. Our seniors can take a course at Harley called Hospice, full year course, And in the first third of the year, they learn about end-of-life issues and they learn how to take care of people who are at the end of their lives. And the rest of the year, they're in the local hospice houses, places like Isaiah and Advent, doing service to people at the end of their lives. That is a powerful learning experience. And 2 of my 3 kids did it. That's about how many kids here at Harley do it, about 2 out of 3. Only for seniors, not for everybody, right? But an unbelievably powerful learning experience and a tremendous act, I think, of service. And the kids walk away, inspired by that.
Wow, very, very interesting, Larry. Congratulations. And thank you for your time and thank you for investing in the next generation. It's very important. This was really an honor to have you in our program. And I'm sure that we will have you in the future programs, learning more about the great things that your school is doing. Thank you again for contributing in this community. We really appreciate your time in the show.
Coming up next week, we'll meet Sean McKay, founder and owner of Site Hub Digital Marketing.
To watch today's episode and the complete interviews of our guests, go to rochesterfirst.com/be-inspired. For more great talk with Rochester's entrepreneurs, listen to Poder 97.1, Saturdays at 9 a.m. For Mauricio Riveros, I'm Julio Saenz. We'll see you next week on Be Inspired.